Would you like to save $100,000 in cash in just 12 months as an entrepreneur? Okay, hello, hello, hello. That sounds like a total no-brainer, right? Now imagine what having that kind of financial cushion would mean for your business, like in your life. The ability to invest in growth in your business. Like, how about that? Just being able to hire a team so your business can truly scale. Like, hello, the peace of mind, knowing that your future is secure, not only for you, but just creating that intergenerational wealth for your entire family. Like, are you thinking about things like this normally? Hopefully. If not, hello, hello. The best part today is that's exactly what our incredible guest today is going to help you do. She is money coach Gina Knox. And in this episode, Gina is sharing some of her proven strategies to help entrepreneurs just like you make this happen. So listen up because you definitely don't want to miss this episode. Welcome to the Momentum Maker podcast. I'm awesome Angie Inkstrom, honoring the awesomeness in you.
And I'm Gina Knox. And once again, a big welcome, Gina. We are so excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you guys so much for welcoming me here today. Really excited to be. Actually, this is the first time I've been on a podcast with two other hosts. So
Oh
this is
yeah.
very fun. New
Oh yeah.
dynamic for me.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's going to be fun. And
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this because I'm excited about what you're going to be sharing today. So, to our audience, I'm just going to say grab your notebook, grab your pen, and start taking notes because this is going to be awesome. I'm sure about it. So, for those of you who don't know Gina, I'm just going to dive a little deeper in her bio and do a short bio. Gina is a financial coach for entrepreneurs with variable income, and she is the podcast host of the Small Business Big Money podcast. Over her career as a coach, Gina has helped her clients save more than staggering $8 million in their businesses, and she's built wealth portfolios worth over $14 million. Incredible, right?
21,
Yeah.
$21 million now. The numbers
Nice.
have been updated.
Really? Oh, thanks for
That's
the
awesome.
update. And once again, just a big welcome, Gina. We're thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction.
Awesome.
You're
Well, you can tell we're
welcome.
excited. So you heard our version of you. So give us
Yes.
the 10-second like elevator pitch in your words.
Okay, my elevator pitch is actually just my like little 10-second history resume. I went to art school. I graduated with a design degree in interaction design, which is like UX design. I got a job at Intuit, the makers of TurboTax and QuickBooks. I was a small business researcher for 5 years, where my whole job was just to research small businesses on their finances and accounting. I got sick of helping a big tech company make like invoicing 5 minutes faster. And I wanted to help people have deep, like trajectory changing change. So I started coaching, and here we are 5 years later. I've coached over, I don't know the actual number at this point, but it's definitely over 300 companies. Maybe I'm closer to 400 companies at this point in my coaching career. So yeah, it's been a wild ride for sure.
Oh my goodness. I love that. That's amazing. Wow, you did your story in like, yeah, like you said, your elevator pitch.
You said 10 seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Oh
was
my
like, okay, let's
goodness.
go. 10 seconds.
I love it. You got that nailed. Well, let's go a little deeper. Let's
Let's.
dig into that a little bit deeper because there's obviously a heart and a passion for entrepreneurs. So where does that come from?
It's interesting. My grandfather was a tailor. He immigrated from Mexico in the 50s. He had gone to medical school in Mexico. This is dramatic. This is going to sound dramatic, but he went to medical school, and then his father was murdered, and he had to kind of come in and take over the family. And his father was a tailor, so he took over the tailor shop. He learned tailoring. He then got married, had his own family, and moved to the United States and started his tailor shop. So to me and my family, entrepreneurship was never a glamorous decision. It was a means of survival. and and then like their kids grew up, they really valued education. My dad's side of the family really valued education, as you know, my grandparents being children of the Great Depression. And so like the generation that raised me, my parents and my aunts and uncles, they're all like white collar workers because their parents struggled. So they were like told, go to school, get a good job, and that's what they did. And so for me, entrepreneurship was never the glamorous decision. It was always like the means of survival. And when I started working at QuickBooks, I realized like that is just my family's story. And it doesn't have to be everyone's story, although it is a lot of people's stories. And because of that, there's just not a lot of financial education, right? It's like you're thrust into this position of I have to figure this out. Even if you chose to be an entrepreneur, you got to figure it out. There's not any education around it. I have entrepreneurs who have bachelors in accounting who still don't know small business finance. And and the reality is that money is incredibly, incredibly stressful. It's the second cited reason for divorce in the United States. And it's a huge pain point. And at my time at QuickBooks, I mean, one of the statistics that we always used to talk about in the office is from the US Department of Labor, no, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 50% of small businesses will close their door within 5 years, and that jumps up to 75% within 15 years. And I truly just believe that, yes, there's the marketing, there's all that, the sales, but if you don't know how to manage your money, it's never going to work. It's never going to last. And so I've always had a passion for money, and I've always had a soft spot for small business. Yeah.
That's so
Mm.
beautiful. Katie, you have some
Yes.
questions?
Yeah, actually I was just thinking about how come you ended up focusing on financing for small companies? Would you dive a little more into your process for doing that?
I mean, number one, it's because of what my expertise was at QuickBooks. It was my job. So I spent 5 years learning about it. So I have knowledge in it. Although I will say, like the last couple years at QuickBooks, my research shifted into mid-market. So I was actually researching companies who were more at like 10 million, 80 million, 100 million. So I have that knowledge as well. But again, it's the soft spot for the small business. It's the soft spot for like, I truly think, oh my God, I'm going to sound like a politician. I'm going to sound like a politician. Small business is the backbone of America. Small business is the backbone of, and not just America, but like globally, small business is the backbone of pretty much all of our economies. And and yet we do not make up the major economic forces, especially when we think about politics today that are so run by private interest. And so I just think that sucks. Like we're working our butts off, and and you see time and time again business owners who aren't getting compensated properly, business owners who by the end of their careers don't have any retirement savings, right? And it's like I just don't want to see that anymore. And I can talk about like specifically why finance is interesting to me as well. My dad, who was a lawyer, he was in public finance, which is ironic. He wasn't like a attorney in courtrooms. He was like an attorney writing bonds for cities and making sure that cities didn't go bankrupt. He taught me a lot about money, a lot about money. He taught me a lot about investing. He helped me set up my first investment account, and he really just like and I asked him a ton of questions. I remember I was in high school during the Great Recession, and I remember being in Spanish class when Lehman Brothers collapsed, and my teacher being like, she paused the class to just be like, what's going on? And I remember going home and saying, Dad, like, okay, what is the economy? Like, I don't, everyone's talking about the economy. I don't even know what the economy is. And he would sit there and explain it to me. And so I always had a natural penchant for it. My dad passed away in 2021 after an 18-year long battle with cancer. And I always say to all my clients, like, I've always had an affinity for this. And I think my business is an extension of his legacy because he taught me so much. And he modeled healthy behaviors with money. And that is such a privilege. That is such a privilege that so many people don't get. And so it's really the mission of my company to continue that legacy and also specifically work with businesses because I feel like we have so much potential and there's so much low hanging fruit. But there's just not a lot of education or money systems that make sense for us. A lot of what I see happening is small business owners taking like personal finance advice and trying to make it work on their business, and then it feels a little funky. And so I think that there's just a lot of need. There's a lot of need, and I'm here to be part of filling that.
Beautiful mission. I really love it.
Thank you.
So I wonder if why not, maybe if you share a client success story with us and maybe that and just kind of share your process a little bit through the eyes of one of your clients.
I'm like, who
Because
do I
I have so many
pick?
questions. But I think let's start there.
Okay, that's a good question, but it's a really hard question. So I'm a data nerd up the wazoo, and I track all my clients' results, incredibly detailed. So I have a lot of people to pick from, but I think I'm gonna pick from someone who, if people listening today want to hear more, I have a podcast episode with her, so we go really deep, and she's a phenomenal story. So she is a business owner, a dating coach who during the pandemic scaled her business up to $1 million a year because there was a lot of people online. There were a lot of people getting divorced during the pandemic who wanted to be dating again. There was a lot of momentum. And she quickly scaled very, very fast. And as you can imagine, as you scale really fast, you have higher team costs, higher software costs, all of these higher costs. And everything was going fine. Everything was going great, in fact. And then 2023 hit. And all of a sudden, she experienced a sharp decline. She went from making $60,000 to $120,000 cash months to $30,000, $20,000 cash months, which to our listeners may seem still like a lot of money, right? That's not an insignificant amount of money. But when you're used to double or triple that, and you have the team and the expenses of a double or triple that, it scared her through and through. And what ended up happening was unfortunately, she thought it was going to go back. She thought, oh, this is just a hiccup. This is just a bump. So instead of adjusting, she just kept maintaining her expenses. And she burned through over $200,000 of savings within
Mm.
a year. And then she built up six figures of debt the next year. Not even the next year, like by Q1 of 2024. And when we met in March or April 2024, she was on the brink of bankruptcy. Like my program has a $500, five payments of $500. She said, I barely even have enough for the first payment. I don't even have $500 in the bank, right?
Wow.
She's on the brink of ending, like of closing the business. And we chatted. I looked at her stuff and I said, I think we can salvage this. Like, you still have $30,000 a month coming in. The end is not here yet. So we can salvage this. So she joined the program. And immediately what we did was we scrutinized her expenses top to bottom. And I told her a really hard truth, which a lot of people who have experienced a decline need to hear, which is your business is not going back to what it was overnight. You have to accept that $30,000 months is the new version of your business. And if this is the new version of your business for now, we have to make the rest of it match. Right now, the rest of your business matches $1 million business, and you don't have $1 million business anymore. And that looks like, I mean, she had five co-coaches on payroll. We had to
Mm.
reduce it down to nothing. She had to be the main coach again. She had these complex systems that no longer matched because she didn't have hundreds of clients that she needed to serve. So she didn't need systems for hundreds of clients at once, right? So we had to really reduce down. And then we also had to reposition because it's not just about cutting expenses. It's about saying, hey, listen, all of these expenses were past problems that you don't have anymore. What are the current business's problems? So we had to reposition her expenses to solving her current business's problems. And within what, so we have what April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. We're like 9 months in now. I'm like trying to do mental math. So within 9 months, she paid off her line of credit, which she had a line of credit just so that she would have money in the bank account so that she wouldn't default on her other debt. So she was using debt to pay other debt, which is that's the level we were at. We've paid back the line of credit. She's profitable again. She's paying herself again. She is like slowly rebuilding and she's on track to be debt free this year in 2025. She's on track to be debt free. Um and like I'm so thankful that our paths crossed because like we that was a critical moment for her back in Q1. That was a truly critical moment for her. And I have other stories like her where, huge revenue declines and we have to make some big shifts to save the business. And unfortunately, a lot of business owners think, I just need to make more money. Like that's the predominant thought. I just need to make more money. And if I've gone through a decline in my revenue, there's this idea that I just need to take one big swing. I just need to do one big thing, take one big risk to get the revenue back. And unfortunately, what a lot of entrepreneurs do is they invest more money into trying to get back to where they were instead of reevaluating and making the current version profitable. And that like final hurrah, yeah, we hear the success stories from people who've gone through that, did a final hurrah and like made it through. But you're also hearing the survivor bias. You're not hearing the hundreds of other companies who closed and had to like mortgage their house to pay off the debt because it didn't work. So I think that it's really important to talk about, yeah, like I want you to make more money, but I also don't want you to have to make more money. There's a
Hmm.
difference.
Yeah, big
There
difference.
definitely is. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's amazing. I'd love to hear another story that maybe not in that much dire.
Yeah. Not so
Just
dire.
because that's
That's a
wow,
doozy.
what a great story. I mean,
Yeah.
that's and for you as a coach to be able to help orchestrate that and kudos to her for because entrepreneurs are they're proud of like their stuff. So
Yeah.
it's really difficult for an entrepreneur to like relinquish some of that control and just like,
Mhm.
all right, coach, just tell me what to do. I'm going to do it. That's a big deal. So kudos to
She
her.
she came to all the calls. She was so vulnerable. She would not fight back, but she would constantly ask questions to try and understand where we were coming from. I absolutely adore her and we're still working together, so we're going to keep like my next goal for her is to rebuild again if she desires, but from that profitable perspective. Yeah.
'Cause I love hearing that it's okay as a business to step back a little bit. If your income's down, that's okay. As an entrepreneur, it's up and down, as we all know. If you're an entrepreneur, you already know it's up and down anyway. And sometimes there is a big backpedal, and that's okay
Yeah.
because you're still an entrepreneur. And
Here's, I mean,
yeah,
here's how I
Hmm.
think about it. Because it's easy for like an entrepreneur who's like 5 years in and they've only ever grown to think I'll only keep growing. But if you actually think about a business from like a multi-decade perspective, like this is going to be my business for 20 or 30 years, doesn't it stand to reason that some years will be good and some years will be bad and that it won't be linear? And I know we all know that intellectually, but then you're in it and then you forget that.
definitely.
It all goes out the window because it's scary. It's scary.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have gone through that this year. I have seen way more revenue declines than in the last 5 years, honestly, in the last 8 years. And I really think it's so simple. It's just interest rates went up.
Mm,
It's not that deep. In 2020, interest rates went down. And guess what happened? There was a lot of free flowing capital. And now interest rates went up. And so there's less free flowing capital. And of course, that's going to affect different industries differently. But like, it's not I think we make things so personal. And like, also, what if there's just other economic circumstances at play and it doesn't mean anything about you?
Yeah,
not
true.
personal. Yeah,
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 it's not.
and a lot of entrepreneurs they sort of compare themselves to other entrepreneurs
Yeah,
and that's also yeah, just magnifying the problems, I think.
100%. But
and
you
even
had said,
compared to where they were a few months ago, like the whole comparison thing is a big deal.
Hmm.
totally. You had said a less dramatic client story. We could do that as well.
Yeah, so when we opened,
Yeah.
we mentioned that a business could save
Mhm.
$100,000 in cash in just 12 months. Can you kind of walk us through one of those clients?
Yeah, I'm trying to, again, I'm like, who do I pick?
Right. Right.
Who who shall I pick?
I
Let
love
me
the
pick
abundance.
let me pick a client who she's a long-term client and I just adore her. Um so when she came to me, she had been making $300,000 a year, so good money, right? For sure, really good money. But here's what she was doing. She was paying herself her W-2, her payroll, and then she was turning around and putting the payroll money back into the business because she didn't have enough money to pay her business bills. And she was in this constant loop of, I make good money. Where did it all go? And I know a lot of people have that thought. I make good money. Where did it all go? And so what we did was we sat down and we're like, there's obviously some cash flow issue here. Like if you make good money, it's going somewhere. And guess what? That's an answerable question. So we sat down and we answered the question. And um, a couple things we realized with her right away. Number one, she was budgeting in her business incorrectly. So she was saying, okay, what do I need to break even? Right? How much money do I need to earn to break even? And let's say that it was, I don't know, let's say that it was $25,000. That's how much I need to break even. Okay. And then when she would go out and try and make $25,000 or more a month in sales. So when she hit that $25,000 sales mark, she would say, I did good. I can chill now. And I just realized, I said, well, where does your owner's pay go? And she goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, aren't you budgeting for your owner's pay? And she goes, I have to budget for that? And I'm like, yes, your owner's pay is part of your break even. So no wonder you're not being able to keep your money. You're having to put it back in the business. You haven't been setting your goals correctly because you never took into account your owner's pay. And she goes, my owner's pay is part of my break even. And I'm like, yes, it's such a small
Right.
thing. And I know it may sound ridiculous to some of you, but to some of you, it's going to blow your mind. You have to account for your owner's pay in your break even. So that was the first fix. Fix number one, we got to do that. Um, Fix number two, we had to reduce her expenses. Like she thought she was fine and she thought she was profitable and she wasn't, right? So we had to go in and fix some expenses and cut some things. She was doing a lot of identity spending. So I have a couple different spending types that I teach my clients. Identity spending is when you spend money in your business to feel more successful than you are, or to feel like you like to feel that way, right? So she was spending money on branding things to feel like she was had the business that had that branding, and she was spending money on coaches who were talking about leveling up your identity. Like there was a lot of identity spending. And the thing with identity spending is that it doesn't work because you can't buy an identity. Your identity is the thoughts you think about yourself, regardless of the circumstance. So she had some pretty negative thoughts about herself, and she was trying to buy those thoughts away. And it wasn't working. And it was wasting her business's money because at the end of the day, your business's like expenses, the only thing you should be spending money on is solving current problems. And you should be spending $1 to make $5. Identity spending doesn't make you $5 in return. It just makes you nothing. It's just throwing money out the window. So we worked on that. We halted that. This was a multi-step process, by the way, getting her to 100,000. I should say too, we started working in around December. So this is now February. We're tackling the identity spending. Then taxes. Then taxes come along and we have to start thinking about that. And so we taught her bookkeeping. She had always outsourced bookkeeping and accounting, as a lot of people do. It's one of the first things most people outsource. And I think it's a huge mistake because what you're doing when you don't understand accounting and bookkeeping and you outsource it is you are simply saying this arbitrary accountant CPA knows better than me and I'm just going to sign off on what they say because that's what they said. The reality is that accountants make mistakes, not on purpose, but they do. And until you understand it yourself, you can't know if they're making a mistake. And so we taught her bookkeeping and accounting so that she could go into the meetings with her accountant. And instead of saying, "Hey, accountant, what are my taxes this year? Okay, let me sign off on it." I want you to walk into the meeting with your accountant and say, "Hey, accountant, this is my estimate. What's your estimate?" And if those don't match, we need to figure out why. So much more productive, so much more productive, so much more safe. Because either then the accountant could explain something to you that you didn't understand, or you can provide more context that the accountant didn't know to ask you. This little one thing has saved me over $100,000 in accounting mistakes that I have found on my personal tax returns in the past. I digress.
So
Okay.
I'm gonna halt you for a moment
Yeah.
on that one
Yeah.
because that's okay. So when you go into that accounting meeting, what is it that you're trying to match? Is it the the profit or
I no, I want to
whole?
match my estimated tax payment at like
You
the
get
how much
that
I owe.
granular with it. Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know how much I owe on an estimated basis every single month. And so then I can add that up for the year and I can say, "Hey, accountant, here's my calculation for what I owe." And it's most likely gonna, I already know that my estimate is wrong, but I don't want it to be wrong by, a magnitude of 10. I want it to be wrong by a magnitude of one, zero point 0.5, right? Um, so I go in with an estimate of how much I owe.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also go in with like a list of, how do I even say this? I need a word for this, but it's really like a list of things that will affect my taxes. So here's how much I contributed to my SEP. By the way, I didn't tell you, accountant, but here's how much I contributed to my retirement account. By the way, I have a child. By the way, we sold a house this year. Like all the other things that the accountant doesn't follow you around. They don't know what's happening in your life, but a lot of life events affect your taxes. So I'm coming with my list of like pieces of information the accountant should know. And the only reason I can do that is because I know what affects taxes because I've educated myself. Right. So that's what I walk in with.
I'm glad I asked that because that's brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All
So
right.
this is April. So we do taxes. Cool, cool, cool. Fine, fine, fine. And then we continue going. We're working on what I call the cash flow waterfall. The cash flow waterfall is my core cash flow management strategy that I invented, I created, and that helps businesses save. I'm happy to talk about what that is, but I don't want to go on a whole rabbit hole there right now. So we're working on the cash flow waterfall. My client's implementing the cash flow waterfall and saving, saving, saving. And she tells me sometime in like September, "Oh my God, Gina, I forgot. In November, I have $100,000 of expenses that need to leave my bank account. I have this thing that's paying in full. I have that thing that's going out. I have this estimated tax payment. I have this, and the other." And so I'm like glad we cleaned up a lot along the way, but she's freaking out. And so we sit together, we put a quick back of the napkin plan together, and and then I didn't hear from her. And then sometime in December, she goes, "Oh, by the way, I was able to cover all those things in November." And I looked at her and I said, "So you saved $100,000?" And she goes, "You're right. I did. Because how did I have $100,000 to pay out $100,000 if I didn't save it to begin with?" And this is the big gotcha. Business owners, when they hear me say save $100,000, they think I mean keep $100,000. I don't mean necessarily keep $100,000 because our money's constantly flowing in and flowing out. But if you had $100,000 of expenses in one month and you somehow had the money, that means you saved it. And I say that to say, like, we really had to work next on her giving herself credit and being proud of those accomplishments, even if they didn't look the way she thought they were going to look. She thought it was going to be like $100,000 cash balance and it was going to never not be that again. And in reality, it's $100,000 cash balance, $20,000 cash balance. It's up and down, but now she has the skill set of I know how to do that. And now multi years later, like now she's covering $135,000 tax bills in one go. Now she's like, as her business has scaled to the point where she is dealing in that kind of volume, she has the money management skill set to to actually like handle that. I think we can't talk about scaling your revenue without talking about scaling your money management skills because you will freak out and you will self-sabotage. If you have you don't if you only know how to manage $10,000 in your bank account at once and you try and scale your company to $1 million in annual revenue, you're gonna freak out. So you need to have these skills. And she's such a perfect example of this because now she is $1 million business owner from that 300K to a million, but she has the $1 million business money management skills that she needs.
Hmm.
Ah, love it. Love.
This is such an amazing approach. I love the way you educate people so they can sort of handle it themselves. I think that's amazing. So I was thinking when you're talking to potential new clients, what's their primary objections when they end up not working with you? What's
Primary
holding them
objection
back?
is that they don't have enough money to work with me.
Oh,
Although I will say, I actually don't get that much anymore. But when that one comes up, it does come up. It's like, I don't have the money to work with you with this. And my answer to that is always going back to my philosophy. I only invest in programs, in team members, in coaches, and whatever. I only invest in my business on something that is a current problem. Think about like a bottleneck, right? If you think about like an hourglass of sand, if if the sand is trickling through really, really slowly, if I were to open that bottleneck, the sand would fall instantaneously, right? Another way of saying that is if I solve a current bottleneck in my business, the return on investment will be immediate if I actually solve the right bottleneck. And there's mastery involved in picking and choosing and figuring out what is your right bottleneck, but my response to them is always if this is actually the current problem, then solving it, you will have the ROI within a month, within 45 days. It will be immediate. If it's not actually your current problem, and I do have clients and I still love them who are in my programs because they just want to hang out, right? Or they just want to be there. They just really love what I have to say. And it's not really their current problem, but they're still getting a return on investment. I always welcome them in. But to the person who's like, I'm really, really tight on money and I know this is my problem, my response is always, then let's solve it and the return will be fast. And the reason I say that is because I've seen it. I've seen it like 300 times. So I'm super confident in I know how to pick and choose what to do to help you make sure you have enough money in your bank account left at the end of the month. And I also am like really, I mean, as you guys can probably hear, I hope I care about my clients' results a lot. It's the thing I care about the most in my business. If I don't have client results, I don't have a business. And so, one of the things we implemented in my group program is CFO reports. What you do is you join my group, welcome in, we onboard you. Once you're ready, you can request a CFO report. And this is where you submit 6 months of financial data to us and whatever questions you have, whatever issues you're having. And then instead of you figuring it out by watching the videos in the course, we go through the 6 months of financial data with a fine tooth comb and we poke and we say, hey, Angie, that's your problem. Hey, Angie, here's the thing that you need to solve. Hey, Angie, these are all the expenses you need to cut. We go through it for you because, to the point of the person who's super stressed out, who has that bottleneck, who says, I can't even afford this program. If you can come in and I can get that done for you, I can find you the money very fast.
Oh my.
I've seen it over and over again. So that's the answer and that's the objection.
I love that you exist in the world
yeah.
and that we're spotlighting you because I can just think of all these business owners, especially in the economy right now, that
Yeah.
need to know you exist. Oh my gosh. You mentioned what was it, the
Yeah, the
water
cash flow waterfall.
cash flow,
Fall.
waterfall. What?
Waterfall.
Yeah, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I can. I
Awesome.
will. Try and stop me.
We
Okay.
won't.
The cash flow waterfall is a cash flow management strategy I invented in 2021. In 2020, I was a side hustler. So I was still working at QuickBooks and I had my business and I had made $28,000, which for a side hustler is amazing. I was very proud of it. But Gina Knox, the individual, I didn't get any of that money, as is very common. And I remember thinking to myself at the beginning of 2021, wait a second. If I want to quit my job, I can't just make sales. Gina Knox, have to make money, right? Like that is a fundamental truth. I need to, oops, that's my alarm that says, that's my little alarm that says, stop working, Gina. Isn't that funny? We'll
That
have
is
to
funny.
turn that
The
off.
the lights start
I
flashing,
know.
place
It's
goes into
like,
chaos.
it really does. Oh my God. And now it says unknown issue. Pause. I'm going to go turn it off. Okay, lamp crisis averted. We are back. Okay, as I was saying, I'll just start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh no, so I'm trying to figure out how to pay myself so that I can quit my job because I need to earn money to quit my job. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you pay yourself consistently? Because I wanted a consistent paycheck because I come from tech with consistent paychecks. So I'm like, how do you pay yourself consistently when you have inconsistent sales? That doesn't make sense. And I know a lot of people have the advice of pay yourself 50% of all your sales. And I just felt like that sounded awful because what if I have a zero cash month? So I'm going to pay myself 50% of zero? Or like if I have a really high cash month, like it just felt like I'm just translating the roller coaster of business to my personal life. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted consistent, steady and personal and let the roller coaster exist in the business. And so I created the cash flow waterfall. And it's very simple. And it's designed for people with ADHD brains who don't know how to do spreadsheets and don't know how to do math very well. Here's how it
Perfect.
works. You have 3 business bank accounts, only 3. A checking account where everything comes in and out, a business savings that I call working capital. That's on purpose because I don't want you to have the feeling that you have to keep your savings. Going back to the client story, right? Working capital is meant to be working. And then you have tax savings completely separate. Okay. So 2 savings accounts, 1 checking. And here's what you do you figure out what is your break even. Going back to that client, what is your break even? I figure out my break even by taking an average of my business expenses over the last 6 or 12 months. And that's going to be some wonky number because some months you have high expenses, some months you don't, right? I'm going to take the average of my business expenses and then I'm going to add whatever my owner's pay is if I'm doing distributions. So let's say my owner's distributions are $5,000. And then let's say that my average expenses are $7,892. So now I shouldn't have done this complicated math. $12,892 is my break even, right? We add those 2 numbers together. You're going to take that funky number and you're going to round it down to the nearest thousandth for simplicity. So in this case, $12,000, right? Owner's play plus business expenses. That $12,000 becomes what I call your buffer. Your buffer is the most amount of money you're going to leave in your checking account at any given moment. I want you to think about your checking account like a bucket that's filling with water. $12,000 is full. That's the buffer. And what that's going to allow you to do is not worry about ever overdrafting, right? You're going to have enough money to send out. You're going to have enough money to pay yourself, even if you don't earn your break even that month. Because there's going to be months where you only earn $7,000, even though your break even is 12, right? Okay, now what is next? Anytime you log into your bank account and you see you have more money than your buffer, so let's say I log into my bank account and I see I have $13,000. You're going to waterfall that extra $1,000 over to your working capital. I literally think about it as like water spilling over the brim and falling into the next bucket, which is working capital. And you're going to do that literally anytime. I do see clients who go, hey, Gina, I'm over my buffer, but next week I have a payment going out. So I'm like, don't put a buffer on your buffer. The buffer is the buffer. Don't put a buffer on your buffer. Always just move the extra money. And what it does is it makes it really simple because I can easily do the mental math without having to check a spreadsheet, without having to do anything. That's why we round the buffer number down. So $13,000, I have a $12,000 buffer, $1,000 goes to working capital. There's going to be months where your checking account dwindles a lot. In the event that it dwindles past your comfort zone, use your working capital. Just move the money back over. It's what it's there for. It's called working capital for a reason. And what this helps you achieve is you are able to pay yourself the same amount of money every month on a regular schedule, even if you don't earn enough to break even, because your working capital is always being replenished and used and replenished. So the theory is during those high cash months, you don't go crazy because a lot of people do this. They'll have a high cash month and they'll go nuts and they'll spend a lot of money. And it's like, yeah, but we weren't thinking about the low cash months that are coming. So during those high cash months, you just follow your waterfall and your working capital builds. During the low cash months, you use your working capital. And now, of course, a slew of issues pops up around what if I can't hit my buffer? What if this? What if that? And that's where we get into the expenses and the CFO reports and like really pulling apart all of that stuff. But the cash flow waterfall is just the most simple system. And I used it to start paying myself $500 a month. And then I went up to $1,000 a month. And then I went up to 2,000 and then I went up to 4,000. And by the time I hit $4,000 a month and I had like 3 months of history of doing that, I quit my job because 4,000 was how much I needed to pay my bills. And the most beautiful thing happened when I quit my job, not there was no interruption in my personal finances. Because yeah, that paycheck went away, but the other paycheck was right there. And and I think this is really important because a lot of people think that you can quit your job when you have a random savings goal, like have 6 months saved and then quit your job. Absolutely not. That is a ticking time bomb of stress because what happens is business owners don't have business acumen. They don't have like actual sales. They hit some random arbitrary 6 month savings goal. They quit their job. They freak out because all of a sudden that 6 month savings that used to feel really nice now feels like a timer. Okay, you got 5 months left. You got 4 months left. You got 1 month left. You better figure it out. You better figure it out. You better figure it out. And it's so stressful. So I always recommend people quit their job based off of owner's pay, not based off of arbitrary savings. And that's what the cash flow waterfall helps you do. Taxes is totally separate, and we could talk about that separately, but that's the system. And I still use it to this day. I used it when I was making, 30K a year. I use it at $1 million a year. It scales with you because the buffer is based off of your business.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I hope you guys were
Yeah.
all taking notes. I
So
wish we had more time. We're actually coming to up to our time limit here. And
I do have a podcast episode if you're interested called The Ultimate Guide to the Cash Flow Waterfall if you want to hear more.
Oh,
nice.
absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, speaking of that, tell our listeners, like if you're listening right now and this is anything about this is resonating, oh my gosh. Tell Gina, tell everybody how they can connect with you further.
Yeah. So I have two programs. I have Small Business Money School, which is the one that we focus on all the stuff we talked about today, all of the business finance, savings, taxes. We're doing a debt payoff challenge, so we talk about debt as well, all the things. That's $2,500 or 5 payments of 500. And then I have a mastermind for business owners who have stabilized their business finances. I have a mastermind called Seven Figure Wealth where we talk about, okay, the next step is now building wealth outside your business. So you don't have to work until you die. So you don't like so you can retire one day. And the goal of Seven Figure Wealth is really to build passive income outside your business even before retirement age. That enrolls twice a year. Small Business Money School is open anytime. You can just come on in and it's 12 months. And I hang out primarily on Instagram at Gina Knox and on my podcast, Small Business Big Money. And my website is www.ginaknox.co. And all the things, all the details are over there. Yeah.
Awesome. Go ahead, Giddy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say once again, Vic, thank you, Gina. It's been such a pleasure, and yeah, I am gonna be re-listening to this episode because I think it gave so much value.
Thank you
Uh,
so much for having
Incredible.
me.
You're welcome. And I would encourage, yeah, all our listeners to just go listen to a podcast. It's called Big Business, oh, Small Business, Big Money.
Small
Sorry.
business.
Small Business, Big Money
I
with
mean,
Gina
maybe big
Knox.
business one day. Let's
Yeah,
see.
maybe. It's always evolving, so you never know. So, once again, thank you for joining us today, Gina. Let's wrap this up. I'm Gita Adkar.
And I'm Awesome Angie, honoring the awesomeness in all of you. And again, Gina, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, listeners, for listening to Momentum Maker Podcast. So keep your momentum, keep moving forward. And if you happen to be a course creator or an entrepreneur who's spending too much time selling one-on-one on the phones, and you are ready to condense time and sell one to many, then open up a tab on your browser and go to elitevirtualstages.com/blueprint and learn how you can turn your expertise into a 6 or 7 figure day using live transformational virtual masterclasses. That's what Geety and I do. So, once again, Gina, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.